Hello there, and welcome to day 74. Over the course of this programming challenge, there have been practice questions. So I thought it's about time I start providing solutions to some of the practice questions. So today and tomorrow, I chose some practice questions at random and I will be solving them. Sounds like fun? Let's solve some Python questions. To the screen. Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 74 of the 100 days. There are 26 days left to go. I'm so excited and so happy. Today, I decided to work on some practice questions. So if you have been following this tutorial from the beginning, you would notice that sometimes there are practice questions at the end of the tutorial that I encourage you to solve. So today and tomorrow, I will be going through some of them, not all. And if there's a particular practice question that you have issues with, you can put it in the comment and I will be in the comment with the solution. So today is day 74, and let's do the practice questions part one. So the first practice question is from day 8. Again, these are randomly selected. So the question is to write a program that checks if a number is both greater than 10 and even. And then if it is, then you would want to print out that it is a valid number, or you would want to print out that it's an invalid number. So I believe on day 8, we talked about booleans. So that's why this question is there. So if I write a function called the check number, then to solve it, we have that if the number is both greater than 10 and if the number is even. That means I would have an if statement that checks if the number is greater than 10 and if the number is divisible by 2 without remainder. And if both conditions, if that's what we're using the and, if both conditions are satisfied, then it will print out that it is a valid number. Or if they are not satisfied, that if one is satisfied and the other is not, or if both are not satisfied, then it's going to print that it's an invalid number. And it's now for me to think like, how do I want to get the number? I can easily just put the number when I call the function, or I can get the number from the user. So it's just whatever you feel like doing. So let's have our function. Define our function as check number because we want to check the number, and then it takes on num. That's the number we'll put in our function. And then I would have an if statement because we're checking that if it's greater than 10 and if num by 2 and it's equal to 0. And if this condition is satisfied, then we would print. Otherwise, we would print that it is not a valid number. And we can easily just call the function and then put the number in it. And you see, when I run it, we get valid number. So it checks that if the number is greater than 10 and if it's divisible by 2 without remainder. So this is a simple way to solve this. But then if you want to get the input from the user, then you can also use an input statement to get the input from the user. But you know that now that you want to get the input from the user, you cannot predict what your user would enter. So now you can use a try and accept that. So if my user enters a wrong number or enters like something that's not a number, then my function should not fail. So we'll have a try and accept that. So we'll get the input from the user, we're converting it into an int, and we're calling our function on the number that we get from the user. And if they enter something that's not a number, we don't want to get an error where it crashes and burns. So enter number 65, invalid number because it is not divisible by 2 without remainder. And if I enter an alphabet, we get a message that please enter a valid number. So see, these are the ways that you can approach this problem. Just calling the function on its own or by getting the input from the user. But then once you're getting the input for the user, you have to put checks in place so your function doesn't fail. Instead, it writes a message explaining the problem to your user. So then the next question was from day 13, And what did we talk about on day 13? We talked about the break, continue, and then the pass. So the question is that we should write a program that uses nested for loops to print pairs of numbers I and j. And then I should be in the range of 1 to 3, and j should be in the range of 1 to 3. And then you want to use break to exit the inner loop when j equals to 2. So when j equals to 2, then you want it to stop. So we would have nested for loops. First in the range of for I and also for j because we have pairs. So we have two for loops, one for I and one for j. And we see that it has to be from 1 to 3. And they want us to use range. So our range will be from 1 to 4. So we can include 3 in our range. So now let me have my first for loop for I. So for I in range, this is my first for loop for I, and then I need a second for loop for j, which is similar to what I have for I. For j in range, also 1 to 4. And then we now have the condition that we want it to break. We want to exit when j is equal to 2. So it's just simple. I would have an if statement that if j is equal to 2, then I want it to break. So we have our break. And now they said that we want the answer to be in pairs of the number I and j. So whatever our value for I is here, we have to put it in a pair with the value for our j. So then we'll have a print statement. So we want to print. I'm using an F string, or you can just print it directly. And then I have I and j. And then I have to close my F string. And this is what we have. And when I print it out, I should get my pairs of I and j. But when j gets to 2, then it should stop. So these are my pairs. You see, the I is starting 1, 2, 3 because it's range of 1, 2, 3. And then J is starting also from 1, 2, 3. But then when it gets to 2, stop. So 1, 1, 1. So this is how you approach the problem from day 13. The next problem is from day 15. And on day 15, we spoke about the math function. So we want to write a Python function that stimulates rolling a pair of dice. And then we want to use the math.floor and the random.random to generate two random numbers between 1 and 6. Print out their sum. So you see, we already have that we have to use math and we have to use random. So the first thing would import math, and then would import random, because those are what we have to use. And then we have to, you see, write a Python function. That means we'd have to have a Python function that stimulates the rolling of the dice. And then we have to use the math.floor. What does the math.floor does? It converts the float to the nearest integer less than or equal to the number. And random.random is used to generate a random float from between 0 and 1. So I'd have my function that is going to generate random numbers between 1 and 6. So a pair of dice, we have die 1 and we have die 2. And we're using math.floor, and that's we're using random.random, generating between 1 and 6. And we're adding plus 1, ensure that the range is between 1 and 6. And then the next thing that we want to do is then to add the total, the sum of our die 1 and our die 2, and then we'll print out the result. So our die 1 and die 2, the total, and then we'll print out the result. We want to see what was rolled for die 1 and die 2, and then the sum of the dials. And then I would call my function. So we'll call our function roll dice. And then when I run this, we get that the dice that was rolled was 1 and 3, and then the sum of 1 and 3 is then 4. So random.random, random float, and random math.flow to convert the float to the nearest integer, and then multiplying around gives you a float between 0 to 5.99, and then we added 1 to it so that the range is between 1 to 6, and then two dies are stimulated independently, die 1 and die 2, and then we added it together and we called our function. So that's our third question from day 15. And next we have the question from day 18. On day 18, we spoke about the Python variable. So yeah, we want to create a global variable x equals to 50. If you have not watched the video, you should watch the video. So let's pick it one by one. We want to have a global variable x equals to 50. It's outside of our function. And then inside of our function, we want to try to print the value of x. Then inside the same function, we then want to assign a local variable and then print the value of x within the function. And what would happen if you print x outside the function? So first we want to print out our value before we do the local variable. We want to see that we can able to print our global variable inside our function. And after we have the print, we will then do our local variable. That means our assigning the local variable x equals to 100, and then we would also print that, and then we will then call our function and now print out the global variable outside the function. I hope I didn't lose you. So we're having three prints. With the final global variable at the beginning, we want to try to print it inside the function. Then we want to do another local assignment that is different from the global variable. And we want to print that value inside the same function. And then we now want to print out the value of x outside the function to see the difference. So I have my function. Let me just call it, I'm just calling it a random name. So text scope. And since I already have my x equals to 50 outside, to use it, I will then use global x. And now I will then print out the value of my hex before we do the local assignment, because you said we have to print the value of our hex three times. So this is to make sure that 50 that we have here, we're able to use it inside the function. So you see, I want to print out the value before the local assignment. So then the local assignment is then x equals to 100. I would have x equals to 100. And now that I have the local assignment, then I also want to print it out. So this is now the print inside my functions after I've assigned the local variable. So you see, inside the function before local assignment, inside the function after local assignment. And then I would call my function. My function is text scope. And now I will then print out the value of my hex outside the function. So what do you think the value of the x would be? What do you think will be the value before local assignment, after local assignment, and outside the function? Well, let's find out. We see that inside the function before, we're able to get the 50, and then after the local assignment, it becomes 100. Then calling it outside the function, our x becomes 100 or stays 100. It didn't change. So this is how we're able to create a global variable, and inside the function we're able to print out the value of our global variable, and then we're able to assign a local variable and also able to print out the value of x outside and also within the function. And then the final question for today was from day 23. And on day 23, we spoke about Lambda function. That's a very exciting day. I like Lambda function. So the question is that we want to create a Lambda function that takes a single string argument and returns the length. So one string argument, and then it returns the length of that argument. So it's just simple. A string, do the length. So we can have, like, for instance, our string can just be a simple hello world, nothing. fancy. We want to calculate the length of the string. And you know, we have this len function when we're dealing with string. So then let's have our string length is what? It's lambda. And then we only have one value. It's not multiple values, just one value that we want to apply a function to. So then I'll just call it x to just represent the string. And what do I want to do? I just want to calculate the length. So I just have len. And what length am I calculating? The length of my s. And then I'll just print the length. I'll just print out the result. So what am I basically doing here? The lambda function takes one argument, which is the s, and then it returns the length of the string using the length function, and then the string length. String length is the variable that was assigned to my lambda function. An example string, that is the string. So this is just saying that the length, I'm using an f string, the length of my hello world is, then calling my function on my example string. So then if I run this, we get 13. You see, the lambda function is just so short, and it's just, you see, just one line, we're able to do the function. One argument, function that we're calling, or the argument, we're calling the length function. And then we just call, where we're applying the function, we're applying it on our example string. And this is what we have. So these are the 5 questions that we were able to solve from the practice question that we have so far. If there's any question that you might be struggling with, put it in the comment. I will try to solve it. And tomorrow we would also solve more practice questions on day 75. Let me know if you understood, or if I confused you or something. Let me know in the comment. That is it for this video. Do not forget to subscribe, to like, and leave a comment. Let me know if you have any questions. And as always, the link to the Jupyter notebook is in the description. See you tomorrow.